القصة هي قصة الوفيات السياسية.
Good afternoon. You're watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Yumna Naufal, and these are today's top stories. Prime Minister Tamam Salam holds a meeting with U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Population, Refugees and Migration, where talks highlighted the burden of the Syrian refugees on Lebanon. Hezbollah chief Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah says that the party's fighters in the Syrian army could have finished the battle for Zabadani in a couple of weeks, but held off to free 2 Shia villages. And Syrian rebels trained by the United States surrender some of their equipment to the al-Qaeda-linked Nusra Front in exchange for safe passage, another setback in the U.S.-led war against ISIS. Good afternoon to our viewers. We begin today with Prime Minister Tamam Salam, who is in New York. Well, he held a meeting with U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Population, Refugees and Migration, Ann Richard, and talks highlighted the burden of Syrian refugees on Lebanon. He said, "We always call on all relevant officials to ease the burden of Syrian refugees on Lebanon." And on Saturday, Salam also held talks with Jordan King Abdullah II and Spain's King Felipe VI. The meeting highlighted the latest developments in the region. Salam is in the United States to attend the opening of the United Nations Sustainable Development Summit of 2015. The summit is aimed at formally approving an ambitious and costly 15-year blueprint to eradicate extreme poverty, combat climate change, and address more than a dozen other major global issues. Implementing the new development goals expected to cost between $3.5 trillion and $5 trillion every year until 2030. It is also expected to be the focus of the 3-day summit that will include speeches by U.S. President Barack Obama, China's President Xi Jinping, and the leaders of Egypt, India, Iran, Germany, Britain, and France. Hezbollah chief Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah says that the party's fighters on the Syrian army could have finished the battle for Zabadani in a couple of weeks, but held off to free 2 Shia villages in the northwestern Idlib province. He said, quote, "We could have taken control of Zabadani a long time ago, 16 or 7 days after the battle began. But we, with the Syrian army, saw it as a chance to achieve some goals, including the liberation of the Fu'a and Kifraya." Nasrallah said this in an interview with Al-Manar. The battle for Zabadani started on July 1st. The Hezbollah chief said the two allies were seeking a deal to facilitate the release of civilians from the 2 villages. News emerged on Thursday that warring sides in Syria reached an agreement under UN supervision over the fate of Fu'a, Kifraya and Zabadani. The deal, to be carried out over a 6-month period, includes the withdrawal of rebel fighters holed up in Zabadani near Lebanon and the evacuation of civilians from Fu'a and Kifraya under rebel siege. Nasrallah said that the first stage of the agreement sees the evacuation of gunmen and the wounded from Zabadani to Idlib. The Pentagon says a group of U.S.-trained Syrian rebels has handed over ammunition and equipment to al-Qaeda's affiliate in the country, the Nusra Front, purportedly in exchange for safe passage. Now, the startling acknowledgement contrasted with earlier Pentagon denials of reports that some fighters had either defected or handed over gear. Colonel Patrick Ryder, a spokesman for Central Command, which is called CENTCOM and is overseeing efforts against the Islamic State group in Iraq and in Syria, so the fighters had handed over the gear in exchange for safe passage in a Nusra Front operating area. If accurate, the report of NSF members providing equipment to a Nusra Front is very concerning and is also a violation of Syria's Train and Equip program, a program that is costing the U.S. $500 million. Ryder added the pickup vehicles and ammunition represented just about 25% of the full equipment issued to the group by the U.S.-led coalition. Coming up next, stay with us. We're introducing the term hackathon and explaining what it is. What? You'll hear it right here. Welcome back. You're watching the 4:20 o'clock news here on Future Television. Egypt's president and foreign minister are favorably considering a pardon for Australian journalist Peter Gracey, according to Australia's foreign minister. Julie Bishop made the comment after speaking with President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and her counterpart Sameh Shoukry on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York on Friday.
And I have also met with President al-Sisi and Foreign Minister Shoukry of Egypt and spoke specifically about Peter Greste's situation. I have just met with Peter Greste and passed on the news that Egypt is favourably considering a pardon for Peter Greste, which will be a relief for Peter and his family.
It seems quite clear that the Egyptian president, the Egyptian government, is trying to resolve our situation, which is very encouraging to me. You know, we've been fighting to have our names cleared for the past 2 years almost now, and it is great to know, or to get that kind of reassurance. From us, it's not over until it really is over. It's not over until we get the formal pardons that all of us deserve. I want to do everything I can to make that happen, you know, help to assist the Egyptian government if that's what it means, to you know, stand up and apply a little bit more pressure if that's also helpful. But at the end of the day, we need to resolve this for everybody.
Malala Yousafzai on Friday urged world leaders to prioritize education as a human right that should be given to every child. The young Nobel Peace Prize laureate made the appeal during a media briefing following her speech at the UN Development Summit in New York. Yousafzai was shot in the head by the Taliban in Pakistan in 2012 for campaigning for girls' education. The teen activist told reporters that tackling issues such as poverty, hunger, and health came down to the provision of education. She also said it was time to stop neglecting Syrian children caught up in the country's civil war or living in refugee camps. A special for you today, the #PeaceHack series is an initiative by International Alert that brings together technologists, designers, developers, and peace practitioners to create and realize ideas and solutions that can be used to stop violent conflict and help build peace. #PeaceHackB is one of many hackathons happening around the world. It's happening in Beirut today, and it is held in collaboration with Chain. Now, Maryam Amjad is here from London to tell us more about Chain and what exactly is a hackathon. So thank you for being with us today, Maryam.
Thank you for having me.
Maryam, Chain, written C-H-A-Y-N. What is it?
So chain is an Urdu word which means solace. So it kind of means getting a peace of mind, feeling content, and it's the whole idea behind Chain is to make people feel that feeling.
Right, okay. And how do you explain hackathon in regards to Chain?
So Chain is also an organization of people that want to use technology to do social good. And one of the things that Chain does is that they host events called hackathons. And a hackathon is essentially a 2 or 3 day event where you bring together all of the people that you just mentioned, coders, designers, and peace practitioners, and you put them in a room and you make them talk to each other. And you set a challenge to the hackathon. So sometimes, you know, some hackathons might be more corporate-based, but social good hackathons would have challenges like let's figure out a way to address sexual violence, or a way to address young girls' menstrual health, or anything like that. And you then get these people who don't normally talk to each other to come up with a working prototype of a solution that's open source and that can be used by NGOs. So they have 3 days to actually build something that works, and then we basically give it away to everybody, and they could use it and implement it and build upon it.
Okay, so hackathon, as you were telling me before the newscast, it comes from the 2 words hacking and marathon. So you only have those 3 days to basically hack your way through a challenge, right? Yeah. Why Beirut?
So in the Chain team, we had a Lebanese guy and a Syrian girl who were really passionate about all of the things happening in Lebanon, and they really wanted to make a difference. And by some great coincidence, last year we held a hackathon where we wanted to address sexual violence in conflict areas, and one of the winning hack team actually built a SMS-based app for Syria, and they approached us and they said, we want to do something in Lebanon as well. So it felt like the perfect match, and we decided to really go for it.
Do you know what the challenge is for Lebanese?
Yes, so the challenge for this hack is trying to find digital tools that would address access to services and access to resources for 3 groups, so women, youth, and refugees.
All right. Refugees, obviously, it's a problem here because of the Syrian influx. women, because I think there's been a lot of, in the news recently, there's been a lot of cases of abuse and things of the sort, and youth because of probably opportunities, I'm guessing?
Definitely. I think one of the biggest things that came out of the research that we did beforehand is the youth are really disenfranchised, and everybody wants to work, but there are no opportunities, and it's trying to find a balance between stopping people from going to Dubai, which I think is the big stop for everybody that I've heard, and making sure the talent stays in Lebanon.
Right, but how do you? I mean, it's beautiful because in a way, it's, you know, you're working for an ideal situation where people wouldn't have to leave. But do you know how this can benefit? Do you think it puts people together? It brings people together, as you were saying, that wouldn't usually be together, and maybe networking through that?
Yeah, we have loads of networking opportunities at the Hack, and the whole idea behind it is that in 3 days you can create a working prototype, but you're not going to create a life-changing, world-changing tool.
Right.
But what you do is you create opportunities for people who can do these things to collaborate in the long term. So you give them a platform to speak to each other and you bring them together. So the tech community and the humanitarian space are quite far away from each other, and neither of them really knows how to approach the other.
Okay.
So coming to events like this, they can actually have conversations and build long-term plans and goals.
Okay, Chain was invented about 2 years ago, it was created 2 years ago, I should say, and you keep growing stronger right now, and you came up with the hackathon, or was it actually a word before?
A hackathon has been a bit of a trend in the digital space for quite some time now, and there's some really famous hackathons that have happened before, but for big corporations. So Facebook, for example, used to host internal hackathons, and they primarily used to bring together coders to solve challenges within a tech organization.
Do you think that's how they came up with, they're going to put now the dislike button? Did you hear about that? That's the latest Facebook revelation?
Well, the Facebook like button came out of an internal hackathon.
Of a hackathon, okay, all right, so that's how it happened, all right, and it served us all, I think, in that sense. It is a digital world today. In Lebanon, you know, we are catching up with the rest of the world, I think. But did you find, upon coming here, did you find things here that maybe needed work, whereas in London it came much easier?
Actually, I found that the hack here was a lot easier to organize because there's so much passion in people wanting to do something. And you know, everybody in London is always so busy doing things, and they're too busy to think about social good. Whereas over here, people are so passionate about wanting to solve problems because they can relate to them, and they have family that can relate to them, and they have friends that can relate to them. So the problem is so much more immediate that people are more interested, and there is so much talent that they can utilize as well. So there's a little bit of frustration in people going, I have all these skills, but I don't know what I can do with them. I know how to code, or I know how to design, and I don't know how to help. So a platform like this really brings them together. Okay, and if anybody wants any information about Hackathon or Chain, where can they find it? So you can follow the hashtag PeaceHackBay on Twitter, and it will lead you to the Chain Twitter, which will lead you to every bit of information that we have. PeaceHackBay, just so everybody hearing, is Peace, Hack, and Bay, B-E-Y for Beirut, written in English that way. And anything else to finish? Thank you for being here. That was Mariam Amjad talking about Chain and a hackathon. I didn't even know what it was until today. And now let me remind you of our headlines. Camp Tamam Salam holds a meeting with U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Population, Refugees and Migration, Ann Richard, where talks highlighted the burden of Syrian refugees on Lebanon. Hezbollah chief Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah says that the party's fighters in the Syrian army could have finished the battle for Zabadani in a couple of weeks, but held off to free 2 Shia villages. And Syrian rebels trained by the United States surrendered some of their equipment to the Al-Qaeda-linked Nusra Front in exchange for safe passage, another setback in the U.S.-led war against ISIS. Those are your Saturday headlines live on Future Television. Catch us again tomorrow at 4:20 for what's making news here and around the world. Have a good weekend.
القصة هي قصة المحيط السياسية.